He was sleeping, and all of a sudden he screamed out, "Don't worry, I'll save you." And his eyes, the face, it was like so distorted, it didn't even look like my fiance.
I got that feeling that something was behind me. And I swear to God, I saw like a gray face look at me.
It was the first house with me and my fiance, Bud. We were just starting out in life, and my father thought he'd give us a hand. So he knew the person who owned the house, and seeing that way, we got a good deal. I never really saw it. My dad rented it, and we were ready to move in. Scary place from the get-go.
Your first home, full of promise. Your childhood home, full of hopes for the future. But what if they also contained something sinister? Would you stay or would you go? Hello, I'm Lawrence Chow. Today, we meet Penny of Ottawa and Russell of nearby Gatineau, Quebec. Both tell of being driven from their homes by a terrifying evil.
I wanted out of this house since the very get-go. Since the moment I stepped my foot in the door. I didn't want to be there. I told this to my fiance, Bud. I said, I'm getting the weepy-cheepies about this house. Maybe we shouldn't move here. He says it's probably just the stress of the move because, it's our first place. You're going to have some, problems with it. So I said, maybe you're right. Maybe that's all it is. But, deep down, I didn't think so. The feeling the first time going in was you couldn't move. It's like you didn't want to go in there. It's like it's just a dreaded feeling like there's something there and you just couldn't put your finger on it. It had a really weird kind of like atmosphere to it. Like it's like when you walk into a room, you have to take a quick look because you think there was something behind you. I knew there was something totally wrong with this house, and I didn't want to be here. As for the basement, I never went down. My fiance always kept trying to make me go down into the basement because I was so terrified of it. And he goes, "Come, you'll see there's nothing down there to worry about." But I wouldn't go. It was like something telling me, "Don't go down there. Don't go down there." But he did. Then when he went down into the basement, that was the worst part. That's where everything really started. He said, "There's nothing here, it's just a bunch of junk." And he was down there for about a good 5 minutes, and he came back up. And Bud was coming straight up the stairs. You could see there's something there. And it just kind of followed him up. I basically saw just a big shadow. Like as if, when you turn around, you see your own shadow. That's basically the thing that I would see. I just gasped. When I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But then when it got up, it just disappeared. I have no idea where it went, but I see it around the house. Curiosity always killed the cat with Bud. He had to see what's down there. He had to see what's there. It was basically right after that where things started to really, I guess you could say, get out of control in the house, where you'd see the shadows and where he'd be having dreams of death, like almost every night, something to do with death. And he'd tell me about him the next day, but it really started to take the turn when he was sick one night. He was sleeping, and he wasn't feeling well that night. He had problems with his asthma. Me, and our neighbor from next door was sitting on the couch just chatting away, nothing big. And all of a sudden he screamed out, "Don't worry, I'll save you." I'm like, he's having another one of those really weird dreams again. He's always dreaming of death. His eyes, like, the face, it was like so distorted. It didn't even look like my fiance. And we went over to him and I stroked his arm and I said, "It's okay, bud, it's just another dream." He grabbed my arm and he grabbed it so hard that he was pressing so hard on it that my hand was turning purple. Finally, he just let go and he fell back to sleep. So we're going, what just happened? Like, what was that? And then he sat straight up in the bed and opened his eyes and looked at us and laughed. And he just kept laughing. His leg moved over. Then he was still torso facing us, but his legs moved over. And then his torso moved over and his head still facing us. And then his head turned. He got out of bed and walked towards us. I swear to God, I was like stuck in place going, what is going on? Being 20 years old, you're like, you know? He walks over to us and then in a satanic voice he says, "He's coming for you all, and when he does, you're gone." And what he said, it wasn't even his voice. It wasn't his voice. I know my bud's voice, and that wasn't his voice. And then he walked really weird, like back to the bed, and he laid back down laughing. And that was the most scariest part. We couldn't even move, we didn't discuss it. We're just watching him and making sure he didn't get up again. We were like all scared. Could he be possessed? I believe so. I believe he was at that specific time possessed, because there's just no way it was him. Bud had gone to do his hunting, and he left me alone in the house. The first night was fine. Nothing happened. We went to bed, my daughter and I. Everything was kosher and cool. The next night, I had taken care of my daughter. We went and we did our normal thing, and I put her off to bed. And all of a sudden, I got this impulse to get up. I got up. I walked down the hall and into the kitchen. I started walking back down the hall and went into my daughter's room. And at the same time, I'm watching from the corner of my eye this knife. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know that I had grabbed this butcher knife. It kind of woke me up from something, and I want to, mother's love, whatever, I don't know, but it was sheer terror, and all I knew is I had to get it out of my hands. I was scared out of my wits. Finally, I released it, and at that point, I scooped my daughter up in whatever was in her crib, and I grabbed her, grabbed my keys, opened the door, got out, and ran 4 blocks to my mother's and my dad's. 3 days later, we were out of there. We were like gypsies. We packed everything up in like an hour. We were gone. Never to see that place again.
Penny tells us she had no control over her actions. For our expert, Dr. David Reed, this sounds like a case of demonic possession. Russell reports the spirit that haunted his home never took over his body, but that didn't matter. He knew it was out to kill.
One of my parents said that, we're moving to a bigger house. So the feeling that I had of going into this house was, with nothing but just, pure happiness, pure, being overjoyed because it was a big house. It was one of those Victorian homes. The first thing I remember was when my dad, got the keys when we got off the truck, and he was going to open the door, and there were these old skeleton keys. And that was kind of eerie for me, because how old is this house? For me and my siblings, my siblings all agree that it was a house that kind of stood out in the neighborhood. It had a very eerie feeling about it. It was one of those houses that you kind of doubted and you kind of questioned when you look at it. Your sixth sense kind of plays with you, and there's something wrong with this place. Any child is scared to go in the basement, and this basement to me was very, very dark. The basement wasn't the most welcoming place, but it was the only place that we were allowed to play. Well, first time me and my brother were in the basement, we noticed that there was this gray steel door. And there were no doorknobs. So me and my brother, used to go and pound our bodies against it, because we, being kids, we were curious, we wanted to open it. And whatever we did, whatever we would, go and kick it, whatever, it wouldn't open. It wasn't a door that when you hit and then it would be like a hollow noise, and it was just solid. So it was just like hitting the wall kind of thing. It was just like boom, and it was just, you can thump it as much as you can. And we really wanted to get into there. We really wanted to break it open and then find out what was inside. And, as being kids, I remember my brother goes, yeah, there's gold inside. It was just very strange, very strange. Wow. It was so out of place. This steel door, it's like it had its own personality. You knew it's wrong. Especially when all the events happened. We kind of convinced that, maybe there's something in that room or behind that steel door. Talking about the time I saw the ghost is really difficult to talk about. It's something I try to always black out. Talking about the time I saw the ghost is really difficult. The thing is, as much as I try to forget about it, I can't. I can remember it literally like it happened yesterday. One day, I was sitting at my sister's vanity, her makeup table. I had these Hot Wheels, and they were made out of steel. To make them new again, I can use my sister's nail polish and paint them a new color. As I was painting the car, I got that feeling that something was behind me. I got kind of like my throat, everything just dried up, like I got scared. I started to hear the door started to creak as it was opening. And I swear to God, I saw like a gray face look at me. So I was looking at the mirror, and I focused. I didn't close my eyes or anything. I remember I felt like I was brave or something, because I looked deep in the mirror and I saw that face, and it looked at me. The eyes of this thing was very angry looking, very mean. The eyes were just so focused on me, like, if looks could kill. It got me so scared. It was the scariest thing that's ever happened to me in my life. I felt like my heart stopped. I just dropped the nail polish in the car, and I ran out of the room, down the hallway, straight to the washroom, because that's where my sister was, and grabbed her very tight with everything that I had. I mean, I probably looked like a ghost to my sister because I must have been white. And I told her, you know, I saw something. It was hard to black out that face for a very long time. Even now, when I think about it, it gives me the chills. The one thing that kind of made it all finalize and say, you know what, we gotta get out of this house, was one night while me and my brother were sleeping, I woke up by this noise of someone like choking and crying. I remember seeing my brother's blanket from his feet being thrown in the air. And I remember getting up, and I turned at my brother, and he had his hands on his throat, but he was more like he was trying to take something off. But there was nothing there on top of it, like you couldn't see anything. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This was very scary for me. My brother was just, he was dying. This thing was trying to choke him to death. My brother was dying, and I didn't know what to do. And I started yelling, and I started crying, and my dad came in, and he saw that my brother was in that situation being choked, but there was nothing there. And my dad got like a stick, and he started swinging in the air. Back home, they believe, you know, if you take a stick, you know, you'll scare it off. My dad was like my hero that day. My dad came in, and he started yelling and screaming and swearing, the amount of profanity that my dad was using, talking to the spirit. And he was just like, you know, take me, you know, if you're a man, if you're this, take me, you're, you know, with all his swearing and his words, like, you know, you're coming after my children, you're coming after my children. Seeing my brother's blanket from his feet being thrown in the air. And my dad came in, and he saw that my brother, like he was in that situation being choked, but there was nothing there. Eventually my brother, you know, gasped for air. And I mean, I know my brother for sure will never forget something like this. He just remembers, like, he thought he was dying. Then my dad called the police. He didn't know what to do. You know, maybe my son needs to go to the hospital. Maybe the ambulance has... My dad called 911. And when he did, the police showed up. And my dad gave them a report and said, like, you know, I don't know. There's something in this house. You have to help us. There's something trying to kill my son. My dad goes, if you don't believe me, well, there's something strange in the basement. There's a door that's in that basement that's sealed. I want you to break it open. I'm giving you permission to open that door. Do it. My dad convinced them somehow, and they broke down that door. From what my dad said later on was that there were human bones in that room. Right after that, my dad put the house on the market, bought a house, and he bought it without even seeing it because he had to get us out of this house right away. He had to get this house out of our lives for our own sanity and our own peace of mind.
Russell's father knew he was dealing with something evil, so he got his family to safety. When her baby was threatened, Penny left her house without a backward glance. Evil spirit or demonic possession, does it matter? For the two families, the important thing was that a deadly entity was threatening their children, and they weren't sticking around to find out what it was. Russell and Penny are no longer threatened by ghosts or demons, but the experience has left them both with disturbing and unanswered questions.
Finding out about the bones in the basement from my dad later on was really creepy for me and my brother, because me and my brother used to play in that basement. Me and my brother would, try to, I don't know, if I think about it now. Am I to blame? Like, did I wake this thing up? I really don't know.
I was so relieved to be out of there. It was like, oh my God, it's like this big burden that just went away, and I can sleep at night again. If I could go back in time and not move into that house, that's a tough question. Because would I still be the person I am today if I didn't go through what I did there? That's a very tough question to answer.
The senior NCO at the time said to me, I don't believe in your ghost. Well, I said, don't be mean to him. He'll get even with you.
I saw her going, and then all of a sudden she just disappeared. Then all of a sudden I seen these men, women, children reaching out.
Well, I've lived in Kingston all my life. My grandfather was a member of the 21st Battalion, which was associated with PWR at the time. I volunteered at the PWR armories for bartender for the sergeant's mess for about the last 10, 12 years. Beautiful building, but it's spooky, of course, like all the old buildings are. It gives you that somebody's been here before feeling.
For some of us, history is not an engaging subject. But what if we could personally connect to historic events? What if history could come to life? Today in Ghostly Encounters, we meet Chuck and John. They both say their experience with ghosts changed the way they relate to history. Working in the Kingston Armory, Chuck Beavis thinks he knows a lot about military life. But the soldier he meets one night shakes his beliefs to the core.
Well, there's 3 messes in our building. There's the senior staff mess, then there's the officers mess, and then there's the corporal's mess. It's for the men to have something that they belong to in their own section. I went to work and we got into a game of euchre because there was nobody else there. There was no reason for us to be there other than we were playing euchre. While we're playing, I looked up and I seen this. It was a shadow. It looked like somebody had just walked into the hallway. I don't know how to explain it. A gust of wind or something had come up the hall and turned and went into the cloakroom. Cloakroom is on the outside of the doors going into the main mess. Well, we heard the hangers all clashing like somebody was walking by them. Kind of spooky, I guess. The way everybody heard it. We were all sitting there together playing cards, and all 4 of us heard it. And when I got up to go down and see what it was, nothing there. But the coat racks were still swinging. Nobody was in there. Well, I believe it was something trying to show us something. I don't know what it was, but something had gone in there. Somebody had moved those coat hangers. One night we were working in the mess, very usual on a Friday. And I looked up and I seen this person who was there but wasn't there. Like, he looked like a young soldier. That's what he looked like. When I first seen him, I didn't want to see him. It was weird. Now, the soldier had a brown uniform on and Sam Brown belt, which was worn by officers. When the first time I saw him, what caught me was his eyes, the way he was looking at me. Just unbelievable. Stern look. It looked like somebody had upset him. But I wanted somebody else to see him. I didn't want to be the only one to see this. But then all of a sudden he disappeared. And he had disappeared down the cloakroom. I got up, went over, and I couldn't see anything in the cloakroom. Nobody was there. So it seemed to be his home down in the cloakroom. He didn't go anywhere else in the mess. It would be hard for me to say, yes, I knew he was a ghost. Yes, I don't know what he was or why I seen him. Well, I was getting really confused about all this and looking around. I went down to the museum, asked Bob if I could look at some of the pictures. Bob said, okay. And I thought, that's him. Getting really confused about all this and looking around. I went down to the museum, asked Bob if I could look at some of the pictures. Bob said, okay. I didn't see any picture that reminded me of him. And then we were sitting down to play cards one day. There again, we're playing euchre. And I looked over at the old Vimy Ridge picture. Something just sort of drew me to him. His eyes, I guess. And I thought, that's him. The same face, same mustache, same eyes. I would have swore it was him. He's an officer, but he was a sergeant. He got promoted when he went overseas and became an officer. He died over there. We were in the mess and kibitzing again about my ghost. They all kidded me about my ghost. The senior NCO at the time said to me, I don't believe in your ghost. Probably never heard a shot fired in anger. You know, that's an insult. Especially if you've been overseas in a fighting war. That's what he's there for. Well, I said, Don't be mean to him. He'll get even with you. And he kept it up. Then he turned and walked towards the washroom. Right across from where the washroom is a bunch of RSM pictures, Regimental Sergeant Major pictures. And just as he got across from the washroom, they started falling off the wall. And he's trying to hang them on to them and keep them from falling to the floor. Like an octopus with 15 arms. These pictures had never been moved, never fell before. But he got them, and they got them hung up again. I still talk to the senior NCO, and he says he never said that. But I know he said that. That's what I heard him say. And I think they got upset with him. Other people who have talked to me about it feel that he won't come any further than the cloakroom is because he ended up an officer. He was a sergeant when he went overseas, and he became an officer. Officers are not allowed in the sergeant's mess, just like sergeants aren't allowed in the officer's mess. I think he's looking for something. If I knew what it was, I'd help him.
Chuck thinks the soldier wouldn't enter the mess because of military protocol. Expert Dr. David Reed agrees, saying it's believed ghosts with a high degree of awareness have the ability to make decisions. In this case, the soldier respects his orders in death, just as he did in life. John Quick also sees ghosts connected to a historic event. But unlike Chuck's ghost, which evades him, John's ghosts confront him head-on.
I'm born and raised in Kingston. I lived here all my life. I've traveled quite a bit all over the United States and all over Canada. I like other places and that, and I like to visit other places, but Kingston's basically my hometown. Maybe because not only did I grow up here, but I also have a lot of knowledge of the history of the city of Kingston. Well, I've always been interested in history, whether it's the American Civil War or Kingston history, and Kingston has a lot of history. The very early 1800s, when we had so many Irish ships coming over and Scottish and so on, people were coming over there to build the Rideau Canal, but they were coming over there dying of typhoid and malaria, and all kinds of diseases like that. And Kingston didn't have a cemetery, except for where this Skelton Park was. So they used that as a cemetery, and they used it right up until about 1893. And in 1893, they decided to move that cemetery, and they were exhuming the graves, and the people in the neighborhood were complaining because of the stench, and money was short, so they just bulldozed down all the tombstones. It was not an easy task, and at one point was finally given up. And so they just covered it over with grass and sod, or earth or whatever, and it became a park. So they just left them. They don't know where they are. They estimate today there's somewhere around 1,400, at least that many, or if not more, graves. Unless you study the history of Kingston, you would never know that that was Kingston's very first cemetery. Skelton Park isn't a place that I would go to in particular, but a friend of mine was visiting from out of town, named Margaret, who was into sending people into the light. But one of the things that they do is visit graveyards and walk into the graveyards, and if there's any spirits there that have not yet moved on into the light, they send them to the light. And whether I believe it or I don't believe it, I guess I certainly believe it now, because that particular night, it involved me. Skeleton Park isn't a place that I would go to in particular. But a friend of mine was visiting from out of town named Margaret, who was into sending people into the light. But one of the things that they do is visit graveyards and walk into the graveyards, and if there's any spirits there that have not yet moved on into the light, they send them to the light. This one particular night when Margaret was in town, she said, "Do you have any more haunted places you can take me to?" Because I had did this sort of thing before. In the daytime, I had stopped at certain little cemeteries and let Margaret walk through the cemetery, and then she'd come back and get in the car, and away we'd go. I had no experiences or feelings about it one way or the other. There is a place, I said, not too many people know about. It's called Skeleton Park. It was nicknamed Skeleton Park because it used to be a graveyard. And I said, there are a lot of people still buried there. Well, can we go there? So here I was, 10 o'clock at night, drizzly, rainy, foggy, pulled up to the park. And I said, this is it. And I said, how long are you going to be? She said, oh, I don't know, whatever it takes. I said, okay, I'll be waiting. So out she got. I saw her going, and then all of a sudden she just disappeared. It's hard to keep track of time when these things happen. I want to say 5 minutes, but maybe it was 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, the wind started blowing, the car started shaking a little bit. And then, sometimes when you recall things, it's difficult. Then all of a sudden I seen these men, women, children reaching out, and I'm looking at them through the windshield. They're reaching, and I'm not scared of them because I don't feel evil from them. And they were in, like, not clothes that we would wear today. The clothes were tattered or ripped, or maybe they were very poor people. Remember, they come over on these immigrant ships. They might have had just the clothes they had on their back. And when they died, that's the clothes they were buried in. And they were worn and they were tattered, and that's probably why I was seeing that. Then, of course, I started hearing I call it wailing. You know, help us, help us. It was kind of an eerie sensation to be looking at these people, you know, reaching out for you. It's like, please help me. I think that's sort of the communication I got from these people, is that they were trying to say, we're here, we're here, we're here. Can you hear us? And that's the part I think that bothered me, because there was young children. I didn't believe for a minute that my life was in danger. I just looked at them and wished that there was some way I could help them. I just knew that Margaret had something to do with this. And I thought, gee, I wish you'd hurry up and come back here. They sort of started fading. And bang, they were all gone. The car door opened up and Margaret got in. I was crying, and Margaret says, what's wrong? I said, don't you ever bring me here again. Never. I said, I don't want any part of this. She said, what happened? I stepped on the accelerator and started getting away from the park as quick as possible. And I proceeded to tell her the story. And I said, did you master what you come to do? Oh, yes, she said, there were a lot of spirits there. She said, I sent a lot of them into the light. But she said, there's still a lot of them there that I need to come back. I said, not with me, you know. I think to myself, do people get stuck in between, here and there? And if so, are that many people buried in Skeleton Park? Are they still waiting to go into the light? I've never been back to Skeleton Park since. I can go back in the daytime, but I don't think I'd ever go back on a dark, rainy night again, or any time at night for that matter.
John wonders if spirits can be stuck between this world and the next. Our expert says the attachment to this world may be to the dead person's physical remains. And this might be more intense if something violent or particularly tragic was connected with their death. John and Chuck were aware of the history surrounding their ghostly encounters. But for both of them, the ghost's appearance radically changed their connection to the past, a past that will live on through them.
Today, it would be a much different story. Today, when human remains are found, whether it's in a wall from a building they're tearing down or whatever it is, today, it means something. These were human beings at one time. These people have a right for us to know when they find these bodies in the woods. Who was this person? What happened to them? I realized, gee, there is another world out there. There are people that have not yet went into that light.
Something supernatural has happened. Something's happened to me. But why? Why me? I didn't ask for it. Maybe he wants me here talking about him. Maybe he wants me here to explain things for him.